Hi, I'm Greg Hunter, and this is the weekly news wrap-up for Friday, January 4th, 2013. Well, the fiscal cliff turned into the fiscal can kick for tax policy. Yes, many Americans avoided paying some pretty disastrous taxes. Everybody got hit with the 2%, Social Security tax. Basically, we're refunding Social Security. I don't think that's a bad thing if you want to get Social Security someday. The other thing, though, is that, they got $600 some odd billion in tax confiscation. They like to call that revenue. And they only got $15 billion in cuts. The Republicans basically got put in a corner. They were afraid they'd get the blame. After all, this is the blame game theater, as I call it. But I do have to give some credit to the Republicans for basically compromising. They fixed the AMT, the alternative minimum tax. They got the they lowered their $1 million threshold to 400 and 450,000. Barack Obama and the Democrats did some good work here in terms of he campaigned on 250,000 and raised it to 400,000 and 450 for married couples. A little pat on the back, but very little. I mean, this is setting up a giant mess for a couple of months where, we have, over $16 trillion. We need to raise the debt ceiling by at least $1 trillion. Some say $2 trillion. We have these automatic spending cuts. And the Republicans, hey, listen, they're going to tell the president, listen, we gave you your taxes. We gave you a tax increase. Okay, now it's time for some cuts. But what they're talking about isn't even what Erskine Bowles was. That was $4 trillion or a little more over 10 years. This is nowhere near that. And Erskine Bowles, the bipartisan commission, from a couple of years ago, that only slowed the growth of government. And this slows it even less. I mean, there has to be some meaningful cuts phased in. I mean, we take in a little more than $2 trillion, and we spend a little more than $3 trillion every year. And what we give away and what we say we're going to give people, just in 2012, that fiscal year was nearly $7 trillion. That's using generally accepted accounting principles. I mean, this is off the charts. And now, last night on Kudlow and Company, I heard Senator Ted Cruz talk about government shutdown if they don't get their way. A government shutdown. I mean, if the Republicans and Democrats can't come together in some meaningful way and quit playing political football with our economic lives, we're going to have a debt downgrade. Could we have that? I say yes. Could we have a big dollar sell-off? Yes. Could we have a bond market calamity in U.S. Treasuries? Yes, yes, yes. I think we can have that all at once. And isn't it funny that in all the discussion, I mean, this is too stupid to be stupid, right? They're ignoring this on purpose. We have a $40 billion a month a bailout going to the banks to buy the mistakes, the mortgage-backed securities, the fraud of bankers, and $45 billion a month for the government. So that's $40 billion a month to buy the fraud of bankers, and $45 billion a month to prop up the government, $85 billion a month. Not a word in the long-term financial discussions for the country, and that's open-ended. It's unbelievable. Speaking of the Fed, the minutes were released, and hey, a lot of folks at the Fed at the meeting, the most recent minutes, which was back in the middle of December, say, hey, we should end QE. And they're going to end QE. They're going to stop propping up the banks. They're going to stop propping up Europe. They're going to stop the whole deal. Listen, just according to the BIS, there's around $700 trillion in derivatives, over-the-counter derivatives, unregulated black hole money, and 80% of those, at least for the U.S. banks, are interest rate swaps. They're going to stop propping up the economy? Really? Well, Jim Sinclair sent me an email yesterday, and let me just read you this. It says, among other things, the Federal Reserve has no practical option to ending QE without ending the economic world for decades to come. This is Jim Sinclair over at JS Mindset. He's made a lot of big calls. I would never, ever bet against Jim Sinclair. He's one of the best analysts, I'm talking globally. He's one of the best there is. And he's very bullish on gold because he says they're going to keep printing. Now, some people say, hey, maybe they'll stop doing it to intentionally crash the economy. I don't know. Either way, gold will be a very good investment to have, according to Jim Sinclair. Next up, speaking of the budget, New Jersey Governor Christie raised a stink about not getting a $60 billion Hurricane Sandy relief bill pushed through. Now, I love it when conservative Republicans are asking for, we're going to raise taxes for that $60 billion? Or are we going to make spending cuts for the $60 billion? Or are we just going to print the money? And we're just going to print the money. That's what the New York comptroller said early on after Sandy. Well, we can't print money, but the federal government can, and that's what they want. Of course, the bill was full of millions and millions of dollars of pork. And the other thing this brings out is, New Jersey is, $282 billion in the red. New York is $300 billion in the red. So what? Everybody from Texas and Missouri and Florida and Minnesota and Idaho and California and Nevada and everywhere else have to pay money because these guys are way in the red. They don't have any money to help themselves. They don't have a rainy day fund. The other thing is, if all these people want to live on the coast, shouldn't insurance rates be much higher? So when something like this happens, that the rest of the country doesn't have to go into debt and doesn't have to borrow money from China or print it out of thin air and debase the currency? I love it when these conservative Republicans, when they need something, boom, let's print the money. I'm sorry for the folks for Hurricane Sandy, but we are in a nightmare budget situation where they're printing $85 billion a month. Oh, hey, I got a better idea. I got a good idea. Maybe somebody can bring up the fact. Somebody could bring up the fact that, hey, maybe we stop bailing out the banks for a month and a half and we send that money to Hurricane Sandy victims. I'd be for that. I mean, at least Americans would get the money and not the bankers. I'd be for that. Nobody ever talks about that. Why doesn't Christie talk about that? Hey, how about we stop this for, it'd be $60 billion. We stop the $40 billion a month for 6 weeks to the bankers and divert that money to help people in the Northeast. How about that? Yeah, no, neither party will bring that up. No, taboo. I just find that bizarre. Finally, Current TV was sold to Al Jazeera, and Glenn Beck tried to buy Current TV. And listen to this: they rebuffed him, and according to the Wall Street Journal, they reported that Current TV said other suitors who didn't share Current's ideology were rebuffed. You mean suitors that didn't hate America, like Al Jazeera? You can say whatever you want about Glenn Beck, but I know one thing. He does not hate America. I can't say the same thing for Al Jazeera. Finally, I want to talk to you about the site. We've had really big growth this year, done really well, and it's because people like you came to USA Watchdog, went to the USA Watchdog YouTube channel. We appreciate everybody who came here and participated in the site. Appreciate some of the people that used the donations button and sent us a little money via PayPal. Also, a few other people sent us some checks. That goes to the bottom line of operating this site. Thank you very much. And again, thank everybody for helping grow this site and supporting USAWatchdog.com. That's the way I see it. Happy New Year.